8, verse 8. I am not speaking this as a command, but as proving through the earnestness of the others, the sincerity of your love also. So giving is relational, and it's based on love. You know, and how do you relate that in just our lives that we live in a common way? How do we relate that? You know, when you love people, you give to them. Have you noticed that? I mean, when you give to your family, you love them, so you give. And Christmas time, birthday gifts, you know, on and on. If I had somebody invite me on Facebook to their birthday party and I don't know who it is, I don't go. Make sense? I don't show up and give them a gift. And when you love people, though, and you remember them and that, you show up, you give them a gift, you know. And so it is very much, our giving is very much based sometimes on our love for that. And so, my friend, because of our love for God, it's not, as we covered this whole subject last week, so I won't go into it again, but listen, it's not based on you have to, it's based on really you want to. And we are appreciative of what God's given us, right? So we're thankful for that. Now, this is probably the last message of the book of Genesis. Next week, we're going to be starting in one of two books, and I'm still struggling with it. I need to decide today because I always start my message this afternoon. And we're going to be back in the New Testament. We're going to be going through verse by verse and a lot of original language in that. So we're going to be hitting it again next week. So just be praying on that. You can expect that. And unless God changes something. So, but today now, we want to talk about a subject that is very important, I think, and it's very practical to your life. It has to deal with Joseph is beginning of our text. In chapter 37, it tells us that Joseph was 17 years old, and during that this chapter of chapter 37, there's several events that happen, several things that are going on. And so we know that, you know, maybe at the end of the chapter, what I'm saying is he's 18 or something, but he's somewhere around 13. This event in his life does not conclude until he's 30 years old. Have you ever had hard times? Well, this guy went through for 13 years. I mean, hard times. We're going to talk about today because you will have challenges. You know, you'll have times that bring tears to your eyes. You'll have times that you want to quit. You don't want to talk to anybody. It's just rough. So this is a very practical time, and if we're not careful, we judge others when they're going through hard times. Warning: beware. Be warned. Be careful about that. Even Jesus, when the night of his, that he was betrayed and taken captive and then crucified the next day, he sweated drops of blood. The angels came to minister to him, it says. So people go through hard times, and we need to realize that. You're going to go through a hard time, and you have. We all have a story of these hard times. How do you deal with it? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about defining moments, things that change your life. You have many of them in your lives. You have many of these challenges, and they're going to define what you are. They're going to define who you are. Jesus said, you will be known by your fruit. So you're going to be known by your fruit, and a lot of this comes from our challenges, and we either become better or bitter. I hope you listen to this, every concept that we're trying to present, because I'm guaranteeing this affects you. This is going to be one of those things God left with us in the Word and throughout the Word, that as you grow and are challenged in life and go through these events, my friend, you are either going to do well or not well. How do you respond? You throw the pillow? You throw a can? Slam a door? Throw a kid? Kick a cat? I heard somebody say, oh, we have some cat lovers. That's good. That's nice. Well, you know what? I mean, you're human, but you're going to grow in. So how do you respond? Do you respond well or not well? That's this whole thing. And how you respond, really, it starts growing you as a human being and as a person, and especially now as a Christian. And the challenge is for you to do well. Now, our text starts with chapter 37, when he was only 17 years old. He has two dreams. He has one dream that the sheaves, they harvested wheat and that and bound them together, and they would stand up. And he says, I had this dream, he tells his family, and he says, your sheaves bow down to my sheaf. And they get, and he was a little brother, Then he said, hey, I had another dream. The stars in heaven and the moon and the sun bowed down. Wow. And they're going, wow, what are you trying to tell us? What are you trying to tell us here, Joseph? And they got mad at him. They were what we call a blended family. They had all, different moms, and they were a dysfunctional family. Now, what's a dysfunctional family? Dysfunctional family is a family that does not operate together, that does not work together, and as a family unit in love. And they blend together, and they become a team. They understand the authority of their parents, and they work well with each other. Okay, they work as a team and as a unit. Well, so many families in the Bible, challenge, if you read through them, there was a lot of dysfunctional families in the Bible. And when our family's dysfunctional, we don't function properly the way that God designed the family unit to function. Okay, very simple. Well, obviously, Joseph's family was very dysfunctional. And so this is not going good, what's happening, him having these dreams. And so the boys were away, the 10 older brothers, and that were away taking care of Dad's sheep. And so Dad said, I haven't seen them for a while. Go find out about them. See how they're doing. So he goes and he finds them. And our text starts here in chapter 37. They said to one another, here comes the dreamer. They're referring to the dreams there in that chapter. 20, excuse me. Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, a wild beast devoured him. Then let us see what will become of his dreams. Now, we joke sometimes about killing one of our siblings. I'm going to kill you. I've heard that one before, But we're not serious. These guys were serious. They were really serious. Okay, verse 21. Don't we have it? Pardon me? I knew that. Okay. I just wanted to talk more. So they're planning to kill him. Reuben steps up for him. He's the oldest, and he says, let's throw him in a pit right now. So they throw him in a pit. Judah then comes up with the idea, Judah now, he's the one that is going to become the birth line of Christ and the blessing. And so he picks up here. He picks up here and he says, well, let's sell him. And so they're going to go, they've decided, well, instead of killing him, they're just going to sell him. So let's take a look at 26 to 28, just to get a reference of what's happening. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? 27. And come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother. By the way, the Ishmaelites they were related to, remember? And so, for he is our brother, our own flesh, and his brothers listened to him. And then some Midianite traders passed by, so they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. Now, several things I want to comment on here. Catch this. You might be mad at him, but to actually sell him and actually go that distance, I just imagine he was crying. Hey, Judah, come on. Levi, Simeon, buddy. and they're saying, no chance. They sold him. He went down. This is a big challenge. And you're going to have events all through life that are challenged at different sizes, but this becomes that defining moment. Do you get bitter or do you get better? Joseph is going to be challenged here in his life of what this is going to make him and who he's going to become as a person. So you're either going to grow in your abilities, which Joseph is going to do. He's going to grow through this, or you're going to shrink and wither. You're going to become either a bitter person over issues, or you're going to become an angry person, or you're going to be unforgiving or not deal well with people and situations and that. Or you're going to get over it, leave it behind, learn a lesson from it, and let God rule the day. Now, you have to follow some of this thing. I tell you, in sports, whatever discipline of sports you're talking about, you get out there and you're having a hard day, what are you supposed to do? Suck it up. You're supposed to give, the coach never wants 100%. I don't know how you can get 110, but, you're going to give 110. And there is that point in your time in athletics where you suck up more than you ever thought you had, and you do more than you ever thought you could. And you can give it all, and you can be tired, and you can be worn out, and your feet can hurt, and it's hard to get out of bed and go to practice, and it's hard to swim that extra lap. It's hard to do that thing, but you are called on it. And some people, what they do, how they respond, is they quit. And when you do quit on that event, it's over. You take yourself out of the game. No, I can't pause long enough here for that to sink in. Because I guarantee everyone in this room, including myself, has quit on situations. We finally said, I've had enough. Have you ever said that? I've had it! And we need to maybe change our wording in that so that we say, well, I've really had it for now. I'll pick it up tomorrow. But, okay, I'll run the lap, but I'm not happy about it. Or whatever. And we've all done that to a point too. But let me caution you, there's events in our life that we have let go and quit, and we're done with it now. And we're not responding well to it. There are events that happen in your life that change you, who you are as a person. Jesus said once again, Matthew 7:20, you will be known by your fruit. So what are you known by? In that case, they're quitters. In that case, they're angry. This other case, they're bitter, or they've grown unforgiving, or they're not good workers. They don't follow through with things. They're lazy. You could just come through a host of examples. We had a guy in our church. I met at a funeral. I was preaching at a funeral. He liked it. He came in. Him and his family came out. Right afterwards, months later, he went to the doctor, found out he had a cancer, and he had 4 years to live. Serious type of bone cancer. No one's ever been cured from it. And maybe now they have, but this is like 20 years ago. And the story is typical that I've heard throughout the years. He was very bitter to his family. But his bitterness for his family made him bitter toward other people too. At the sniff of thinking they were like his family, he would respond poorly. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever done that? You're mad at somebody and you bark at somebody else. Come on. George, you need to step this game up today. I haven't heard you. Maybe you need to be sitting in the chair over there. He's our Amen Charlie here, so. So, you just don't do well. Bob was struggling this time, and he began. I went to see him so many times, visit him, got to know the family. Was there the day he passed, and it was found out that Bob was brought. His parents owned a laundry service, dry cleaning and laundry, and he was the son who was faithful. He was the son who was there and worked and worked and worked and worked. Grew up through it, did all the work. The rest of his brothers and sisters abandoned it. He was the one that was there, and then if he got through high school and into college sometime there, he ended up moving out here to California. And when his parents passed, the brothers and sisters worked together and took the whole business, all the money. He got nothing, and he was the only one that had really worked and served Dad and helped. You understand the picture? And he was so bitter that they had done this to him that he never told them. He never contacted them again. Matter of fact, he never told them that he was dying. When he died, nobody knew it. His family didn't know it, and they weren't obviously invited out or talked to about it at all. It's just bitter. But what it did, what I want to tell you is, not only makes you bitter at them, it makes you bitter toward anybody that has a sniff. If you smell anything that's like that, don't you get upset? You look at them, you go, yeah. And you start barking and biting people that maybe don't deserve it. Because who you become now, in this example, you become a bitter person. And so in these situations, I mean, let's be honest with Joseph. Joseph could have become very, very bitter. He could have become, he could have been a tyrant. He could have given up. He could have gone, when he did work for where he goes, he could have done the least amount he could, just been lazy. He could have snapped at people. He could have become defensive. He could have become what I call a turtle. They only venture out when it's safe, but you poke at them a little bit and they go back in their shell. You know what I'm talking about? And we have a lot of people that have that turtle complex, that because they tell me, hey, I'm just not going to venture out there anymore. I've been bit a couple times. I've had this happen. So they pull their little chubby legs in, little head, and they do not respond well to that situation. And so here's Joseph. Now, so you have a choice of which one you're going to become. Well, I'm going to tell you something very important on this, is that we have these events. If they come from God, and God's doing this work to grow you, then it's to grow you. And you're going to see that happening in your life. When you have an event that God brought a test in your life, or God brought this issue in your life, you are going to grow then. But if it's the devil, or an evil person who's maybe responding to the devil, I tell you, look at the Bible. Where the devil gets involved, Genesis chapter 3, sin, it's to crush him. So the devil does things to destroy you, to hurt you, to bring depression, to bring you down. God brings things in your life to grow you. Okay, you understand the difference? As you go through the Bible, you'll see that, and you'll see how important it is. Let's take a look at this in chapter 50, verse 20 of Genesis. And there's other texts we could look at, but I just want to show you, it's said very clearly here. As for you, Joseph is speaking to his brothers now. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. Well, there we got it. The bad guys did it to do something. So even in the same event, you can have two things working. You can have somebody evil do something, but God can still bring it about for good, because he's going to grow you. See, God can use anything. In Jonah, he used a storm to bring about his will, and then he used a great fish, and then he used a vine that he grew, then he used a worm to eat the vine, and then he used a sun shining down, and then he used a wind to dry it out. And God can use anything. We're going to see that over and over in this message. God can use things. And he's going to use that to start bringing about his purpose. And so that's what's happening here. God had a perfect plan, and you know this text well, but let's look at it real close and see this. It's very consistent in Scripture then. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 5. We'll just go right through it. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith is supposed to be, look at this, produce endurance. Verse 4. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Just growing you. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously, without reproach, and it will be given to him. So you're supposed to grow. You're going to have events, and it's to grow you. It's grow endurance. You're going to grow stronger, bring you to completion. That word complete and perfect. You know, talaion is the word, And it means to come, telos means to come to an end. So you got to come to the end of this event. It's like graduating from high school. You came to completion. You're not perfect. You don't know anything. The word perfect really isn't the greatest in there because it leads us to the wrong idea. But we need to come to the end of it and finish the task, not quit on the way. Okay? And so that's what's being said here. And so you will go through these, and you need to come to the end of it and become a better person. Now, what happens to Joseph? He could have become very bitter, but there's another thing going on at the same time, and we'll see it beginning in this text. 39:1. Let's go right through, all through 4. Now, Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, so this guy's connected, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. Verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. He's in prison. Not prison. He's with Potiphar. He is, a slave, but he's successful, God says. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now, his master saw that the Lord was with him and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant, and he made him overseer over his house, and all he owned he put in his charge. Not only the whole farm, even his own personal effects. Do you think Joseph responded well or bad? Come on, what do you think? He responded great. He grew as a person. He grew spiritually because he saw that the Lord was with him. A lost man, a lost Egyptian, saw the Lord was with him. And so he said, man, this guy, I want a piece of this. I want a piece of this blessing from God. And so, he grew in his leadership. He grew a skill set that made him possible to manage possessions, people, relationships, that he could trust a slave he could trust with everything he had, even that he could come into his house anytime he wanted to, because he was in charge of even the house. Sounds pretty cool. We need a Joseph, don't we? You need a Joseph at your house? Well, yeah. 2 of them maybe. Okay, so this is how he responded. He didn't get bitter. He didn't get worse. He's growing as a person. Let me ask you, how are you doing as a person? How some of these events, I want you to go back through some of these events you might be bitter at, you might be struggling with, and you can make a choice today. You might have responded bad up to now, but you say, I'm going to learn this principle. You can do it or just go the wrong direction. But why don't you try going the right direction, God's way, and do what God wants you to do. And so now he has another challenge, though. So what's God doing here? In Romans chapter 8, and I've preached this a lot to you, 8, verse 28, we know all things work together for good to them who love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. We need to be involved with God's purpose. Now, there's 2 words in this text. Verse 29, there's another word, but I'm going to just talk about one for a second. Prothesis is the word for purpose or plan. Understand that this verse is talking about somebody who's called according to God's purpose. A prothesis is this. Pro means before, and thesis would be spelled in English, Thesis, your thesis. This was God's thesis. So when God has a plan, it's his thesis on that situation. It's his plan. It's the structure he's put together. Okay, that's what it's saying. So God has a plan here, and we knew from chapter 50, verse 20, that God's plan was to preserve the family. And so God is going to use all these things working together. And the first thing you have to do with Joseph, if you're going to preserve him, is you're going to get him down, preserve the whole family. God wanted to get him down to Egypt. So he used his brothers. He used the Midianites. And he used the Potiphar. Potiphar just wasn't any guy. He was the officer of the bodyguard of Pharaoh. And so the only way to get this guy down there, so you realize what's going to happen. What the end of the story is, his whole family comes down to Egypt on a free ride. I mean, they're on Egyptian welfare. That's pretty cool, man. They give him the best land, Goshen, right? God didn't cheap them out. Listen to the story. Man, they had it made. They were able, instead of being afraid from all the other cities and all the gangs and marauding bands and that, God put them someplace in incubation where they were able to be brought up in protection from the most powerful nation at that time. They were safe. But God had to get them down to Egypt. And so sometimes, my friend, God brings some of these events in your life not just to grow you, but to work out his purpose. He might just be working something out in your life, and we got to start paying attention. Maybe this situation was bad for you. Maybe this is a dead-end road, this job you had. And you're going to stay there and you're going to be starving. So God's going to move you over here. You've got to make sure it's God and not you. You've got to be praying about his will, and that's hard. Sometimes you don't know, and if you can test the waters, you test them in that. But man, I'm telling you, so God is moving this guy, but now he's got him down into Egypt, and he's got him close because he's got him to the person who is the bodyguard for Pharaoh. Look what happens, verse 7. It became about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." He didn't tell him to lie, be a liar. He was talking about she wanted to have sexual relationships with this guy. He says, "Oh boy, here's this nice, sharp, young-looking guy, muscle. See these guns?" And he says, "It's not funny." And so he says, "No way, Jose. No. My master's put me in charge of everything. I couldn't do this. I couldn't sin against him like this." So then she keeps going after him. You know the story. He went in the house one day. See, he was the master of it all. And she grabs his robe and he takes off running. And she accuses of them of trying to rape her and that. And so he gets thrown. Now he gets thrown into the Pharaoh's prison. It's not any prison. He got thrown in the Pharaoh's prison. God moved him closer with this event to where God wanted him. He's working out his prothesis. He's working out his plan. This is all part of God's plan. Verse 20, chapter 50 tells us, remember, God had a plan. This was his purpose. And so this is all starting to work out. But Joseph now could really get mad again. My brothers and sisters were against me. This woman. We know women say this man, and Joseph could have said this woman. He could have not liked any women after that. I've talked to some men who think all women are wicked, and I've talked to some women who think all men are wicked. They're half right. Half of them are. But Joseph could have turned bitter, but he didn't. He got better again. He wasn't there long, and let's look what happens at the end of chapter 39. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. Again, there's a spiritual thing going on in Joseph's life here. And gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. Let's go right through the story. Then the chief jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. And the chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge, just like Potiphar. He just gave him everything because the Lord was with him. See, this lost guy recognized this guy's spiritual and he has God on his side. Whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. Isn't that cool? I mean, this is just awesome. But Joseph is still growing his skill set. he's still doing well, that he can minister to people. He can, his people skills are growing, his management skills are growing, that he can go from a farm to a house to a prison and still manage things. See, sometimes it's not where you are, it's who you are. And here, really, I'm telling you folks, you have a choice, because I'm preaching you not about these guys, I'm preaching you about you. You and me, we need to watch it, because we've allowed these other things that we could call challenges, our defining moments, because they're going to find who you are, and that's why Jesus said, you will be known by your fruits. There's going to be times that people are going to look at the fruit of your life. And these guys look at the fruit of Joseph's life, and they said, the Lord's with him. Amen. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Yes. This guy had it together. Right. And so Joseph's now in charge of the prison. I mean, if we put this guy anywhere, he was in charge of it. Right? And it's going to get bigger. It gets bigger and better. Remember last week, Luke chapter 16, who is faithful in a little, be faithful in much. He who is faithful with other people's possession will be given more. Oh boy, it's happening with Joseph. It's coming down now. Now he has an event that takes place, because while he's in prison, the chief cupbearer of Pharaoh and the chief baker of Pharaoh, they had a problem, and the Pharaoh got mad at them and threw them both in prison. And wound up, there's a verse tells us, right under Joseph. So Joseph has this relationship going. He's a very relational person. He talks to him and he says, hey, I can tell you now, what's wrong? They said, oh, we had these dreams. He said, tell me about them. God will give you an answer. God's with me. God will give you an answer on this. So they said, oh, okay. And so the chief vine cupbearer said, there was this vine and it had 3 branches, and I saw the grapes on them, and I took them and I squeezed them off in a cup and I gave them back to Pharaoh, and he drank it. He says, you know what that means? He says, in 3 days, you're going to be lifted back up, and you're going to once again be his cupbearer, and you're going to give it to him. And sure enough, in 3 days he was. And he says, listen, when you do, don't forget me. Man, I'm your buddy. I'm Buddy Joseph. Okay, I'm your palsy here. Tell him I'm not supposed to even be here. I was sold into slavery. I'm a Hebrew. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a good guy. And so then the baker said, that went pretty well for him. So I'm going to give this one a shot. He said, hey, there was this, basket on my head and these loaves of 3 loaves of bread and that, and the birds came and picked it off and that. And he said, what does that mean? He says, well, in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to lop your head off, and you're a goner, man. And so then both of them came true. So he's down there for a while, and then God gives Pharaoh a dream. The dream that God gave Pharaoh, the first one, he gave him 2. The first one was in the same night. He woke. He was sleeping, and there was these 3 cows that came out. The Bible says they were fat and lean. Some say fat and sleek. I'm not quite sure how you can be fat and lean. If you can be, I'm it. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Maybe you have some fat here, and places you don't want to have fat anymore. But hey, these cows were fat and lean, and they came out of the Nile, and then 7 more came out after them, and they ate the fatties, and these were gaunt, and they were sickly-looking cows, but they ate the fat cows, and they didn't look any better. Same situation, man, and they were still ugly and gaunt. He said, then he woke up and said, wow, that's disturbing. And then he went back to sleep, and a stalk of corn came up. And on 7 years. And on the 7 years, they were really plump ears, it says. And then after it, 7 more came up and ate the other ones. They were withered and dried, and they ate the other ones and didn't change them at all. They're still withered and dried. And he woke up and said, good night. What was this? I can't sleep now. So he calls his magicians, he calls his people and said, counsel me, what does this mean? Nobody knew. The cupbearer knew. He says, let me tell you what, one time I offended you. Pharaoh, I'm sorry I offended you. He says he was real careful not to stir up the storm again. He says, sorry I offended you, but I offended you one time, and I went down there and I had this dream, and there's this Hebrew down there that God is with this guy. this guy knows God. And he answered, and it's just like he answered me and answered the baker. Everything came true what this guy said. You need this guy right now. So Pharaoh said, get him for me. So he goes down and they get Joseph out and he cleans up, he shaves and shaves his beard, look just like mine. And trims all up and looks real good, and he goes in before Pharaoh. And he says, what? And he tells him the dream, and of course Pharaoh tells him what's going to happen. You know what it is, right? There's going to be 7 real prosperous years and 7 really lean years. And the lean years are going to be so bad, it's going to eat up all the wealth of the 7 years. And so Joseph, having grown in all of this leadership, God keeps moving him closer with these negative events, these defining moments. He moves him closer and closer to where he really wanted him, because he wanted him to be useful for him. God had a plan. And God's sovereignty, God is not fickle or whimsical in his sovereignty. It always has a purpose. There's always a plan here. And so here was a plan, and Joseph was told him, he said, I tell you what you need to do, Pharaoh, is you need to get some guy that is wise and take the 7 years, and you need to save. Because when you have bad days, you can go back on the good days and you can have something. You need to bank something. That's true. We talked about that last week. And listen, when you have good years, my friend, you don't just go out and party and spend it all. That's what a lot of people do, right? We've watched it. They go out, they yahoo! And they just party. And afterwards, they have nothing. And then you have bad times, and then you're having bad times again, you have nothing to fall back on. That's your own fault. So Joseph told him his plan, and the Pharaoh said, who else, guys? Who else has more wisdom than this guy? The Lord is with this guy. Let's put him in charge of everything. This guy went from a house, from a farm to and the whole house and the whole thing to the whole prison. Now he's running the whole nation. The agricultural, Secretary of Agriculture under Trump. Like it or not. You might not like the Pharaoh, but, that's what it is. He's now Secretary of Agriculture. You got it? There he is. Now he's running the whole show because God was moving him to do that, because now his family's going to come down. And when he comes down, they give him the best of the whole country. They get a free ride. They give him transportation on Air Force One. And, Chariot One and that. And they get these guys down there. They've got everything. And it's all free, And later, they become slaves, but that's 430 years later. God builds this little group of, people to 2 million plus people. Wow, in 430 years. Just an amazing story. But the point is that because Joseph was faithful and God had a plan and a purpose, Joseph grew, developed skills, was very relational, and built his management skills. God could give him more. Luke 16, he who is faithful in a little will be faithful in much. How are you doing? What God's given you? How are you doing with some of these old problems that you've had, these challenges? We all have them. Charles Tremendous Jones, true name. He was an evangelist. I like the name though, huh? Yeah. He said this: when life kicks you forward, when life kicks you, let it kick you forward. You're going to get kicked. You're going to get slammed sometimes. You're going to have some of these events that happen. Every one of us is. The encouragement is to grow through them. You can either hang on to them and be bitter and get mad, be an angry person, not trust these type of people, not do this, or you can develop skills and growth and management of your own life and your own emotions, and you can be able to deal with it so that God can still use you. It's your choice. You put this thing together. You do it. And so God has a plan. Some negative events are going to push you closer to where God actually wants you. Maybe you need to leave this job. Maybe you need to leave this thing. And God's going to take you over someplace because that's where he wants you. And you need to be growing through it. And just trusting God that he's going to do it. Now, all of us have had these type of things happen. And we have people who hurt us. You have been hurt from people. If you haven't yet, it's coming. I know, because we human beings can be dirty. And so you're going to have this, and you're going to go through it for years. I've been going through some things from some people in business for years, and it doesn't stop. And you know what I've had to do? I've had to pray for the person, pray for the situation and that, but I've also had to do this. I've had to accept what it is. I want you to get that, because sometimes I think you do all that you can, but you accept sometimes what it is, because it is what it is. I have that statement I say. People say, well, this happened, and I say, it is what it is. That's the way it's going to be. And so I usually try to exhaust things, but listen, what I'm telling you that for, and I'm closing with this, is that you have something possibly right now in your heart, some event that's been very difficult. And you can be mad at other people, mad at them. I don't know what's going on with you. You cannot trust things. You can not venture out anymore. You can become that turtle, just pull back in. And only peek your little head out when you think it's safe. But it is what it is. And you have a choice to still live your life to the fullest. To still live your life to the most blessed life you can live. And let others see God in you. Let them see by your joy and your love and your forgiveness and your strength and your courage and your servitude, your servanthood, in your relationship with you. Let them see God in you. And then Jesus will be glorified. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16. Let's pray.